Okay, we're back in open session. We just had an executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to discuss a fire department personnel matter. And we're prepared now. In executive session, we took 2 votes, and I'd like to make those votes public. I'm going to ask Diane if you could read the motions and the vote.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Spurlett to put an article on the special town meeting warrant to transfer $300,000 from free cash or stabilization fund. This is in regards related to medical expenses for public safety personnel. Second motion by Mr. Spurlett was to put a special town meeting warrant article specific for the authority to short-term borrow up to $750,000 pursuant to Chapter 41, Section 100 of the Mass General Laws.
Both motions were approved unanimously by the board. What we're doing here, we have an injured fireman. Town of Westport is self-insured. And what we're doing is addressing short-term and a bit longer-term process in dealing with self-insurance as a town. There are some bills that have come in. We're trying to address those with an article in the special town meeting warrant. And we've asked the business manager and the town administrator to look into the correct wording of that and to advise the finance committee of that action. And secondly, we also need, Jack, if you would, to check with our town council for the wording of the borrowing for a bit more longer situation. Both have to be on a special town meeting warrant, and we need to do that ASAP to address both of those if we can, for the time frame that we have to allow articles to go on to the town warrant for town meeting action in May. Our May town meeting, again, is Saturday, the first Saturday in May, May 3rd. It starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. So the annual town meeting will have a special town meeting within the annual to address these 2 motions. And those motions will be in articles when you see it at the town meeting. We'll have further discussion on that, but I wanted to make that public. The nature of the executive session had to do with the nature of the accident that was involved, and through the request of the fire chief, there was an executive session to talk about some of those details. I'd like to go on now to the regular agenda, and we first have our homegrown state senator with us today, Michael Rodrigues, to discuss a bill that he championed through the Senate and through the House some years ago, and now it's law, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually co-championed it because Representative Paul Schmid was very involved, and he just texted me. He's stuck in traffic, but he is on his way. He was in the State House today, so he has every intention to be here. I expect him walking in any minute. But in 2012, the legislature passed Chapter 307, and it's probably just as easy if I read. It's only 2 paragraphs. If I just read the legislation. It says, Chapter 10 of the General Laws is hereby amended by inserting after Section 35WW the following section, 35XX. A, there shall be established and set up on the books of the Commonwealth a separate fund to be known as the Horseneck Beach Reservation Trust Fund, to be used without further appropriation for the long-term preservation, maintenance, nourishment, and public safety of Horseneck Beach in the town of Westport. Any balance in the fund at the end of the fiscal year shall not revert to the general fund, but shall remain available for expenditure in subsequent fiscal years. No expenditure made from the trust fund shall cause the fund to become deficient at any point during the fiscal year. An annual report to include the projects undertaken, expenditures made, and incomes received by this fund shall be submitted to the clerks of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and to the House and Senate Committee on Ways and Means not later than October 1st of each year. Section B, the Department of Conservation and Recreation shall impose a surcharge of $1 upon each fee charged and collected from admission to and parking in the Horseneck Beach Reservation. The additional monies collected from the surcharge shall be deposited into the Horseneck Beach Reservation Trust Fund. Expenditure by the trust fund for public safety may be made available to the town of Westport's police, fire, ambulance, and emergency personnel. On or before November 30 of each year, the Department of Conservation and Recreation shall meet with the Board of Selectmen of the town of Westport to discuss the maintenance and safety plan for the beach for the next calendar year, as well as the balance and expenditures from the Horse Neck Beach Reservation Trust Fund. This act shall take effect on January 1, 2013. And it became law on October 9th, 2012. So we established this Horse Neck Beach Reservation Trust Fund beginning for last calendar year, January 1st, 2013. So in calendar year 2013, the trust fund collected, hang on, I've got the exact amount here, somewhere in the paper. A little less than $50,000, $45,819.
That doesn't include June, though, right?
Right, there'll still be more money transferred into this account. They'll at the close of the fiscal year. 2 weeks ago on a Friday, the Department of Conservation and Recreation called. Representative,
Oh, Senator,
come on in.
thank you. I'm sorry to be late.
How was the ride?
Miserable.
Yeah,
Should have took the train.
yeah, someday.
We're looking forward to that. Looking forward to it, Dick.
So Representative Schmidt and I met with Chief Pelletier, Chief Legenda, Jack Healy representing the Board of Selectmen, and Carl Pastore, who's the Regional Director of DCR, to go over, as specified in law, the expenditure plan for this calendar year. And let me just say that both Chief Pelletier and Chief Legenda did a tremendous job, very professionally proposed what they would like to see utilized for public safety, both police details and EMT details down at Horse Neck Beach. And it was agreed to at that time that DCR would authorize between $8,000 and $10,000 to be used for extra police details. There will be communication with Chief Pelletier determining when these details would be necessary. If it's a hot weekend beach day, you know, mostly for traffic details, because that's the biggest problem down there. And Chief Legender was very concerned with the fact that there's no EMT on the beach, and that when his personnel are called, when the ambulance is called to the beach, there's difficulty getting out to, if there's someone's injured, out to the dunes or out on the beach. And so they've agreed for about a $10,000 allocation for a number of EMT details to be on the beach on the very hot days. Once again, it'll be on the busy days, it'll be between the chief and DCR to really determine what days those EMTs are going to be necessary. The beach itself is going to be purchasing 2 pieces of equipment, a variable message board, so that when patrons go into Horse Neck Beach, there'll be an electronic variable message board that can tell them if, you know, if it's high surf, if there's shark sightings, if there's Portuguese men of war, or if the piping plovers are in certain areas to keep off certain areas. And they're also going to purchase a new security camera system. So the expenditure from this trust fund this year will be $39,600, with the balance thereof remaining in the fund for subsequent appropriations. And once again, let me just say, I think both Chief Pelletier and Chief Legenda did a tremendous job representing the town of Westport and talking with DCR. And the only outstanding issue that we have that's been this issue since we began talking about this 15 years ago is that police details on Horse Neck Beach or any state reservation, the purview of the environmental police. They have right of first refusal. So as details are posted, they would have the right of first refusal. But in discussions with DCR, these details are going to be above and beyond because the environmental police, if they need additional details, will be out on the beach in the, you know, on the property, whereas Westport police details will primarily be for traffic management. And in all honesty, I think we're down to 72 environmental police in the whole state now. We just don't have environmental enough to really, for them to do what they should be doing in the state.
Oh, Mr. Senator, I think there are a few things that we need to talk as a board on this, because I think you mentioned that the meeting would be with the Board of Selectmen each year.
Yes.
And so we look at this as our opportunity to weigh in, so to speak. as
Well,
a
that
board.
opportunity was represented by Jack Healy, so I'm sorry DCR is not here. but-
Well, we'd still like to weigh in.
Okay.
Okay, because as a former chair of the Finance Committee, and our state representative was also a former chair of the Finance Committee, as I was, all three of us battled with the cost of maintaining public safety with the additional influence of summer traffic associated with Horse Neck Beach. Let me say that I think, Michael, you've been a champion in getting funds for the town and through the pilot program. I looked at this when there was some debate going on within the town, and I could only find one other community in the state that outmatches Westport in the amount of contributions they have with the pilot program. I think that's significant. That community is Edgartown, and they have about 1.2 million. I think Westport comes in about 833,000. There isn't anything close to that after that. So the town is receiving a lot more money than they had in the past through the efforts of our state senator and our state representative. Having said that, I think that the time that we all spent on the Finance Committee, we were concerned in trying to see if there was some way that we could get some financial support for the additional burden that we have in public safety in the summertime. Now, that's not to say we don't have an advantage of having people coming into our community for tourism and for, the advantage of financially that they provide for us, but there's also a cost associated with that. People on Route 88, people coming off Route 88 onto Old County Road, going on to Drift Road, going on to Pine Hill Road, going on to Main Road, sometimes getting a little lost and going down the harbor by mistake, and they thought they were going to the beach. There are all kinds of requirements for public safety. There's additional burden that we have to put on. We're facing declines in budgets. Under 2.5, we have a real problem in public safety and trying to maintain the same level we did 2 or 3 years ago in public safety. Now, the pilot program has been fantastic. And maybe we're being unfair when we start looking at this source of funds for the trust and saying, well, we want to do something different with that trust of fund. It's clear, though, that if you're talking about pilot, there's funds coming to our community. And if we were getting 100,000 or 200 less in the pilot, and it was in this trust fund, and we're able to use it the same way, then we probably would be talking the same way. But the way it's looking now, it looks like the dollar a car doesn't really serve the community. I would say that the chiefs would argue maybe it does because they can nip things in the bud if they're on the beach. But we were looking at trying to have some relief once the cars got off of the beach and started going on the town roads, and the cost associated with that, the additional costs that we had to deal in the summer associated with that $1. That $1 seems like it's going to go into details for people on the beach. We would say, in all due respect, that's probably something that the state should look at in maintaining it. They maintained it in the past. If they've got another source of funds for it, fine, but why is that somehow part of an advantage for the town? It is, I'm sure from the chief's standpoint, from the budget standpoint, it hasn't given us that relief that we thought we were going to get through this legislation. That's been a discussion by individual members here for the most part, and from the community. They anticipated when this legislation was going through that it would be a relief that we could apply to our police department and to our EMT and public safety in general. So, having said that, I want to open up to other board members because Steve and others had asked to participate in that discussion when that took place, but there was a mix-up, I guess, in folks that were interested in participating and have the opportunity. So I'd let Steve go first because he was the one.
But while it's fresh, may I respond
Sure,
to that?
sure.
Certainly, yes. We all understand, and the state understands, that there's an impact that Horse Neck Beach and all state-owned land has on local communities, which is why we do, or even though it's tax exempt, which is why the state does make a payment in lieu of taxes. I think it's the only tax exempt property anywhere that does that, at least in this town. I know Boston, Mayor Menino negotiates with all their tax exempt to make voluntary payments to pilot, the churches, the universities, the colleges and stuff. I do focus on the pilot line item very carefully in the state budget. Every dollar that we as a state appropriate to the payment in lieu of taxes line item. Westport gets a disproportionate share as opposed to the other big local aid number, which is called UGA now, unrestricted government aid. That's diluted through 351 towns and communities. Pilot is much more specific. So as you can see, in 2010, Westport received $297,000, less than $300,000. Last fiscal year, we got $810,000, a $510,000 increase in local aid through Pilot. I really think $810,000 more than mitigates the impact that Westport has with Horse Neck Beach State Reservation. Also measuring, as you said, the positive economic impact of having those, I mean, there's a negative from public safety. I know the chief has his own parochial view, which he should. That's his position. But just think how many people going back and forth to Horse Neck Beach, stop at Lee's, stop at Partners, stop at Handy Hill, stop at Bayside Restaurants. You know, that's all economic. It's because they not only do the visitors bring potential problems and impacts to public safety, they also bring a lot of dollars into the town. But the impact fee that was proposed, it's modeled after what they have at Salisbury Beach and what they have, I think, at Nahant Beach. It's a fee, it's not a tax. It cannot go into the general fund. It has to be used specifically for what the fee is raised for. And in this case, the legislation spells out, you know, the nourishment, maintenance, and may be used for public safety, because those public safety details, both from the police and from the EMT, are going to absolutely benefit the patrons at the beach, but at the same time, free up personnel so Chief Pelletier doesn't have to worry when there's a traffic jam down on the beach to tie up one of his on-duty officers to go down there and deal with it, that there would be a detailed police officer.
Well,
So there
details-
might be there might have been a misunderstanding of what the fund was used for.
Right. That's what I mentioned earlier.
yeah.
But the details, I'm not sure I have the same read as you, because we do have folks that are employed by the town that are going to be on details for the state. Typically, when we have details, there's another party paying for those details. Now, the funds are coming out of the state, but up until this year, you had a budget, you had a business model for Horse Neck Beach that didn't include details.
Did not
And-
include details.
And you had, well, did it include details from the town of Westport?
Right.
So if we are going to be asked to do that, the people that are doing details are not going to be able to do other work in the summer at the same time. If we have a budget crisis within our community, that's something we have to look at. So the chief certainly could argue differently on that, but, you know, it's sort of like somebody working overtime, how effective they're going to be at a particular time when they have other things they're responsible for.
I assume
I
the
think-
police
I think-
chief has personnel
But if,
to do the detail?
Well, if I
well,
may.
if I could finish
Yeah.
my thought on this, because this is something that I think our community feels, at least some members of the community feel that we'd like to address. I'd asked once before, and I know it was time-sensitive, but is the budget of Horse Neck Beach public?
Yes. yeah.
So at some point, I would request either through our state representative or you, if we can get a copy of that, because I think that might resolve the issues. Because I think there's some concern in terms of the
Yeah,
fairness. The
I
town
can
wants to be a
tell you-
good partner.
I can tell you that gross receipts for Horse Neck Beach State Reservation I don't know if, we don't have FY,
They
14.
they can't hear. Mike.
microphone.
gross receipts, I believe, were just under $500,000, $496,000. Payment in lieu of taxes alone was over $800,000. Never mind the budget at the beach, paying for 50 lifeguards and all the capital improvements, so.
So the Horse Neck Beach is not being run, at least at a break-even point at the state.
No,
I think
no.
that's, some people don't understand it.
no, it's a public, it's certainly supplemented by everybody in here with your tax dollar, as all public beaches are, yeah.
Right. I think it would be helpful if we could see
Sure.
kind of a, you know,
Sure.
a 12-month profit and loss,
Yep.
if you would,
Yep.
for that area. And in terms of the detailing part of it, I'd certainly give the chief an opportunity to respond to details, or either chief, for that matter.
Well, first, I don't want to argue the point. What I'd like to do is discuss the fund and its merits. First, I'd like to start by wholeheartedly thanking Senator Roberts and Paul Schmidt, State Representative Paul Schmidt, because this is the first time that we really have a seat at the table. I have been arguing for 12 years that we need to have a seat at the table, and every year I call, at the time, State Rep Roderick's up and say, Mike, can we have a sit-down with the folks down at the state about what's going to happen this year? March comes, April, we still haven't heard from them. Then before you know it, it's 4th of July, and they're calling up saying, traffic's backed up to Charlotte White Road, and, can you bring us details? And it's too late. This is the first time we're ahead of the game. We have a seat at the table. We had the most cordial discussion we've ever had. The new South Region Director, Carl Pastore, seems very reasonable, seems very accommodating. He wants to help the town. He wants to work with the town. That's the first time we've ever heard that. In the past, we've had some management for DCR that have told us, bottom line, we call 911, you have to come. It's the town of Westport, so we don't have to hire details. This is the first time that they're encouraging us to work with them. And I think that speaks volumes for the two of you and for the new management at DCR. I think in part, this only passed because Ed Lambert didn't oppose it. I think even though he didn't have, he wasn't the authority on saying whether it did or not, but he most certainly didn't oppose it when he was in charge of DCR, and I think that's important to be said also. What's important about these details being at the beach for us is it's not taking away from us. It's not taking someone off the shift that's then going to get paid from this fund, so taking away from the complement we have. This is going to be in addition to the complement we have on the road. Through this fund, we're going to be able to put an extra police officer down in the south end on the beaches. So if there's an emergency, that officer will be able to respond to Cherry and Webb, to anywhere else, even though they're going to be paid out of this fund. If there's an emergency, the same thing. Someone calls 911, there's help, they need assistance, all officers on deck are going to go and help. In the past, we didn't have any communication with the beach, with the environmental police or the state police. Now this will give us an open line of communication down there through our radio system. There's a lot more pieces of the puzzle that are going to fit together, and I think this is finally our first step in to having some joint management down there. In the past, like I said, we'd get to know whoever was the local manager, and we'd try to meet with them on occasion. But we'll actually be sitting at the table on a regular basis, deciding how many officers we're going to send down there. If it's, as the senator said, if it's a beautiful weekend, we'd schedule more officers. It's going to give us a budget to work with, a $10,000 budget. Will give us approximately 3.2 details a week. So if we have a rainy week, that'll put 3.2 more details we can have in the bank.
Between the two?
No, that's just for police.
So we're going to have 3.2 from the police. How many are we going to have from the fire?
What they looked at for fire was basically just the weekends, from July 1st for Labor Day weekend.
How many on the weekend?
It would be 20 days,
But how many people?
2.
So we have 2 people on the weekends, and we're going to have 3.2?
3.2 a week, and if you had a rainy week, then you may have
So an average of maybe 5 employees from the town of Westport will be doing details at the beach?
one a day. No, one per day.
Right.
Sure. And if they're rained out, then that money will stay in the fund and it'll be utilized the next year.
And typically, when somebody goes in a detail, when will they go back on their regular duty?
It's two complete.
To how many hours they would put in the course of a week?
Not following your train of thought. Are you saying that they're not going to be able to perform their regular job function because they're working?
No, I'm
at-
just asking. I'm trying to get clarity on it. That's all.
I don't
I'm
have
not
any
making any
clarity on it.
assumptions. Well, I'm just, typically, if a person does a detail on the weekend, as you've envisioned, as you work this out,
With the fire department, the details would be 8-hour details. On fire departments, off shift, they're usually off for a minimum of 48 hours. And on their 2 days off, then they would work for 24 hours and be off for 4 days. So there's a big gap between their on-duty schedule and their detail schedule.
so if we can't fill those 2 seats through a grant, and we're not successful in an override, we're going to be down 2 firemen. How is that going to factor into additional firemen doing details and
This-
workloads?
Well, it would just be off-duty personnel that would be utilized. It wouldn't affect the on-duty crews at all.
More likely than not, this would be reserve officers, more likely than not. But,
And I guess the question for the senator, is this typical of what the state's doing in other areas? Do we
Yeah,
have
this is
details?
modeled, this legislation is modeled after what happens at Salisbury Beach, in the hot beach. Yeah.
And so there are details up there in those beaches.
I'm not sure what they decided up there. It's really up to the local community, the local leadership, the Board of Selectmen, to request. It's not, there's no one-size-fits-all. Every property, all three properties are different. I've never been to Nahat, so I don't even know what it looks like.
From
You
what
know,
the regional director said, Hull kind of mirrored what we're doing
Yeah,
here.
so-
The town of Hull basically is doing what we did. When we first started this as the chiefs, we didn't realize either what these funds could be used for. Would it be, we could request a piece of equipment? Would it be going to the general fund? Would it be offsetting our budgets at the annual town meeting? And when we had the meeting with the representative and the senator and the director, they made it pretty clear that anything out of this fund has to be specific to Horseneck Beach, which we weren't aware of, and basically we developed a plan from that point perspective.
One of the things, dealing with that, some of that fund, first year it's gonna be tough, it's just starting out, it's just probably gonna be paying for personnel, but subsequently as that fund builds up, because there's no cap on that fund. One of the things I would like to see is, maybe they purchase some type of rescue vehicle, four-wheel drive type vehicle that's gonna be staying over there. I would rather see that vehicle used there versus bringing our Ram when stuck on the beach with the salt water and all that. Have something that's germane to that, built for that purpose to stay and be used on the beach.
That
And
was-
subsequently, when the beach closed and all that, we could store it and use it around for some other
That
stuff.
was
I mean,
actually
that's-
one of our proposals. In years past, Horseneck had their own EMT detail there on a four-wheeler.
Yeah.
So when there was someone that had an illness or an injury or something on the beach, we were directed with the guys to get there. Right now, we'll get a call, there's a medical emergency at stand 17. There is no one there to direct us there. It's just, in the past, they had an EMT on a four-wheel. That's what we initially proposed. The director actually stated, why don't you do what Halt does, they actually station a crew down there. The crew is eligible to leave if there's emergency somewhere in town, just as long as you let the DCR know. So that, there was, like I said, we had kind of one of two proposals, and the director basically recommended the second proposal, so.
Any other board members? Michael?
Can, either, or both chiefs, I guess, can you give us a sense for just how much more money we spend today as a result of increased seasonal activity down at Horseneck, just with our existing situation?
Because of Horseneck in
Do
general,
we have more shifts? Do we have
there's no-
more calls, more, that sort of thing? Or we could say, hey, we're already spending X amount of dollars as a result of activity down at Horseneck.
I think that's kind of hard to put a number on it, because, for example, incidents on Route 88, if there's an accident on Route 88, just because they have a bay incident on doesn't mean they're going to Horseneck. So it's kind of subjective, I guess, you could say, because we really can't pinpoint a number of, I could give you a report how many times we've been to Horseneck Beach.
Right, what was that?
But-
What was the
but I
call-
would-
What was the call for service to Horseneck Beach roughly per year?
I don't know off the top of
Okay,
my head.
okay.
I'm guessing there's a seasonal component
In
to our
a
activity,
general way,
right?
Michael, we can't do that. We can, the call-ins for both the police and the fire, we have a ballpark figure. It's not going to be exact, but you can have a pretty good ballpark figure on it. We see it when they do their annual reports each year in terms of incidents and calls, and just by way of operations, day in and day out, you got a feel for it. Yes, Steve?
Michael, on the cameras, do you know Chief, maybe you know, are we gonna be able to tap into that? Is it something you could view from the station, or is it gonna be internet?
He hasn't purchased a system yet. What he was looking at is a system that had a DVR on it, so he could burn discs. I don't know if it's gonna have an IP address, and they're gonna share that with us. I think he's mostly concerned with the ticket money at the, at the gate. I think he's mostly concerned at watching the
Well, I was
employees,
just wondering
but
if we could have the tri-level, so you're looking at the gate one way and then the road's both ways, so we have an idea. You can see right at the station if it was around the corner or not.
they do have cameras down there now,
Right.
but he's looking in addition to the camera system that's there now. And in the future, I would like a better system down there that we could access, we could access at the dispatch. But we haven't discussed the specifics of what type of camera system he wants to use.
The other thing was, Michael, I don't know, maybe we could shoot for it next year, but I was hoping we could get some calming effects for the side roads where they're zipping down to the beach. Even if it's just a couple of the radar units that you can attach to the speed poles on Horse Neck, especially Horse Neck, because it goes down, people tend to use bicycles more on Horse Neck Road. That's all, that's one of the things I was thinking about for the future, if we're gonna have the 48,000 play money, but.
Well, you got a nice calming effect on East Beach Road right now.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's gonna be going away. But, that is, I'm sure you see it, Paul, on your road, a lot of bicycles going down to East Beach and whatnot. It'd be nice if we could slow them down a little. We get a lot of calls on Horse Neck flying.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion, and, it's not just for personnel, it's for capital expenses also.
Right. Well, that's why I just want to put that out there, to help us, so.
Yep.
Yeah, we were kind of looking at ways where we would benefit a little bit more directly, but I want to give other people, Craig, do you want to speak? I guess, everybody else?
Just got one thing.
Good.
But on that, I might be wrong, 65 and over, or 70 and over, it's free, they let you in free on Horse Neck, my understanding, I think.
I don't, maybe, yeah, I don't know if it's
Yeah, I
65 or 70, yeah, I don't know.
Is it a senior citizen
That's
discount?
a
I think it's probably,
statewide, it's,
it might be a
I think it's
discount, oh, it's
reduced. I
free.
don't think it's
It's
free.
reduced, probably.
it's $7 per day, $35 for a season.
Or $10,
permit.
it's a $10 ticket, I think it's a $10,
Okay.
something, whatever. I know it's a reduced rate.
Yeah.
Does that dollar per charge go to those
Yes.
people as well? So it's everybody, in other words, even if you get.
The legislation says $1 surcharge
If you're going in.
on every,
Okay.
yep.
I know somebody's gonna ask that, so I was just wondering about that.
A surcharge of $1 upon each fee charged and collected from admission to and parking in a Horse Neck Beach State Reservation.
So whether you
for
get
every-
there for $7 a day, be a buck, or if you get a
Right.
$10 pass for the year, it's to be a buck everything.
That's right.
One
No,
thing
it's
that
a buck when
will,
you buy the $10 pass.
Right, exactly.
one
It's a
thing,
buck when you buy the $35 season rate.
one thing that will also be beneficial on the EMS side is when they have like the periods of time when the Portuguese man of wars comes in.
Right.
We're down there 3 times a day for people
That's right.
getting stung. That detail will take care of that and leave our on-duty staff here to still
Oh,
cover
no
the rest of
question
What
the
we were
town.
trying to do is get some relief from
Right.
those details going down there and that they have in the past. One of the other areas that people have asked, and now we have both our state senator and our state rep here, might be helpful just by clarifying what actually was the case. Early on, folks claimed that when the State Beach first opened up, there was a parking lot for Westport residents at a reduced or no cost. Was that the case?
I don't know.
Okay.
That was 1957, before I was
Okay.
around when Horse Neck Beach was, so I don't know
Well,
what the case was. There's a lot of folklore about.
Well, I'm just trying to.
I hear all
think
the
we can-
time
I
that the
think we can-
state, what I always hear is the state stole our beach. I have people tell me that all the time.
Yeah.
None of that was our beach, that was all private property.
Right.
That the state bought and purchased, after Hurricane Carol. So you hear a lot of, conjecture and
Well, we can.
this happened,
we can
that
I mean,
happened.
it's
Somebody
fact,
can-
it's fact one way or the
somebody-
other. We can
somebody-
research it.
somebody
We
can-
get it.
yeah,
We get the
absolutely.
answer to it.
So-
So there's a concern whether that was the case. Right now, if any disabilities issue, any handicap accessibility, it's free. People
Right.
can park there.
Right.
I'm not aware of any other benefit that taxpayers would have in the town of Westport for Horse Neck Beach right now.
$810,000
On-
worth
on-
of benefits
on
that
the-
goes right
on
into your
the-
general
on
fund
the
is pretty
pilot.
generous.
On the
Right,
pilot,
Right.
okay? But in
And
terms.
part of the
in-
reasons that
if-
pilot is so, besides just us appropriating more money in the pilot line item, is because of all the capital improvements. Do you understand how pilot works with valuations? And both Rep. Schmidt and I are working right now on the new environmental bond bill that's going through. The last one, we allocated $15 million for the 2 new bathhouses and a new beach services building. We're now focusing on the campgrounds, that we need to upgrade and modernize those campgrounds. They're pretty much as they have been since they were constructed after, I think in '58, they were opened. So we need to put new bathhouse in the campground. I want to electrify the campground. So that would mean right now, Horse Neck Beach State Reservation, including Gooseberry, which, by the way, is part of it, is still under Westport UMass Marine Biology, is valued at $85,264,000.
Right. So let's stay with the pilot figure for a moment here. You mentioned earlier that you anticipate, and Paul, please feel free to jump in on this if you have some thoughts on it, but you anticipated your revenue to be somewhere about $500,000 in a year for the Horseneck?
Horseneck Beach, I believe, in the last report, I think was FY12. We don't have FY13 yet. I think it was $496,000.
Okay, and you're paying the town of Westport and Pilot alone $833,000.
That's right.
And you do now have $1 per car that we'll be able to use as a community, but pretty much from the state,
Right.
to have community public safety at the beach itself, to help protect in public safety, which will be a change in your business model compared to the previous year. These funds will be dedicated for additional details from the town of Westport. In the past, we haven't done it that way, where we can now allocate, we've never had details at the town being paid through that fund or through any kind of budget from Horseneck.
Yeah, we've had details paid.
Not fire
Yeah.
details.
Not fire details. We've had details, I mean, back in 1998,
Well, you just used from 2010.
okay, but I can tell you what, I mean, this has been an issue with me since my time in the legislature. Dealing with Horseneck Beach, the impact, and specifically with the public safety impact. And and I say 1998 because I can remember what office I was in the State House when, at that time, I think it was Officer Bell and Simcoe were members of the union.
Probably, yeah.
And we met with then Commissioner Peter Weber over a concern that the state police were getting when they were called in they needed additional details down at the beach. Always the environmental police have right of first refusal, no one disputes that. But then they were calling in the state police over the local police, so we, at that time, were making the case that you really should use the local police details. They know the roads better. They're the ones that respond to emergency 911 calls. And at that time, and I'll never forget this, but Commissioner Weber said, you know, you're right and we're wrong. I assumed that the protocol was environmental police, state police, if they refuse, then local police. But he goes, we don't have to do that. We, of course, environmental police, but then we can go right to the local police. And those police details were paid for out of the operating budget of the beach. And as far as the business plan goes, I really don't know what the business plan is. The legislature doesn't develop business plans for any of DCR, and I have a lot of DCR properties in my state senate district, Heritage Park, Heritage State Park, I have Freetown State Forest, Demers Lloyd, did a lot of, so we don't really develop business plans, but we can certainly get you what was, you know, what the revenues coming in was and what the budgets were appropriating, were appropriated. I'm not even sure, when we appropriate for DCR, we don't appropriate, you know, we'll appropriate like $448 million. We don't, it's not so much for Horseneck Beach. So, because I think there's 1,650 properties that DCR owns and manages throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's all done internally, but I'll get you whatever information I can.
I think it would be
Yes, Wade.
helpful.
Yeah.
DCR has had a record in the last few years of maybe looking at how they do business a little differently and how they manage the business.
I'm
and
sure
whether-
they have.
you
They've
know,
been cut, their budgets have been cut drastically, as
Yep.
every state agency
And-
is. I mean, we've all been looking at how we do business differently, so.
As the town of Westport is.
Yes,
We want to stay
yeah.
a partner here.
Yeah.
We recognize there's some advantages to Horseneck.
Yeah.
It's just that we're seeing some additional manpower in this agreement going in details, and we thought we were going to be getting some relief financially, and we don't see that. And I started this conversation by saying, I appreciate what you've done on the pilot situation.
Yeah.
And I think once we see a budget, we can see how that's being managed, whether it's a DCR issue or whether it's a state issue. We can at least see the revenue and see the fairness in that in terms of the community.
Yep.
Any other, Michael?
Well, I agree, but I just like to thank you guys again. I mean, $85 million, if we just taxed it, we'd get about the same amount of money. So I think it's a fair shake on the pilot compared to a lot of pilots that we've seen come through here, so nice job.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Are we asking for,
Well, I mean, technically, you said earlier that you don't know how other boards of selectmen have,
I don't really
you know,
think
we
there's a-
either
there's-
endorse
there's
the
not a-
plan or,
Yeah, that would be,
you know,
I don't really think there's a vote necessary.
No, well, I just,
well, the legislation says there'll be a meeting with DCR and the Board of Selectmen.
Right, and that was held already. And that's what the legislation says, yep. The Department of Conservation and Recreation shall meet with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the maintenance and safety plan of the beach for the next calendar year.
You know, we,
Yeah,
So this
I think it's
$39,000
clear
is
we
what
never
came out of that
designated
meeting.
anybody else in that capacity, in all due respect to the chiefs or the town administrator. So I think it should be something based on the legislation that the Board of Selectmen should, you know, weigh in on.
So our
I'd
motion,
make a
I
motion.
mean, I
that-
think that's what Steve was asking some weeks ago.
I'd make a motion that we accept this year's plan, because they're gonna come back before it's again back, I think, October, November.
Yeah.
And at that point, we'll have at least a year, a full year, and see how it's going, see what some of the issues are. We'll have the chiefs come back, and we can adjust whatever we gotta do, but we have to start somewhere, so.
Second.
My motion is we accept it.
second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate a copy of the budget if we could, though, just to get some comparisons. Thank you. You bet. Thanks.
Super, thank you.
Okay, next, Michael, we'll turn it over to you, Coastal.
You guys want money?
More money always, MMA. That's right, that's right.
There'll be an increase this year.
All right.
Don't yell too much about pilot. I just like to quietly.
You don't want to call too much attention to it.
Jim?
Can I ask,
The agenda's right there, if you look at it.
Okay, we have Michael Sullivan on Coastal Community Grant Program.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Jim Whiten and Nancy Durfee to join us at the table? What they are here tonight is to talk about a grant for which they have already applied. And just by way of introduction, Nancy is a person who has spent quite a bit of time working for Serped. She has a lot of experience writing grants, and she saw this opportunity for us to apply for a grant that came up through the state in a rather last-minute fashion. And she and as well as Bart Henderson, who is our indentured servant law student from UMass, worked on this at no charge to the town, and they came up with a really nice submission, and I'll let them discuss the submission tonight, but the point is to solicit a letter of support from the Board of Selectmen, for which they have a placeholder on their grant application.
And the grant was in our packet as well, so people who had it along with the
So
letter.
we didn't vote on this last week? We just did?
No, we tabled it.
We'd see the grant.
I thought, okay, got it.
The grant was in the packet, and I hope you all had a chance to take a look at it.
Any questions?
It's pretty straightforward. Our match is going to be incumbent to in-kind services. What are the in-kind services again?
Jim Hartnett would be working closely with, as well as I assume the Westport Watershed Alliance would also offer some of theirs as well. And you can always assume space if they need space, especially since it will be, possibly you will be doing an RFP for someone to do this work, because it is beyond my scope and Jim's to be able to do this kind of work. So you would take that, maybe offering them space in the town hall, and use that as part of your in-kind services as well.
And if I could just mention, Tony, that, as I said, this was a last-minute, it was sort of a surprise to all of us that the governor put this money out there in the application process. So we didn't have a lot of time as a town to react to this. And Jim, through his association with Nancy, brought it up and said one way that we can make this application is through the planning board, because they were meeting 3 days after we all sat down for breakfast and tried to figure out how to do this. So this application was made in the name of the planning board, but with the understanding that if we're successful in the grant, we'll take a look at just where that home should be within the town government here. So whether it be planning or water resources or beach committee or whoever is the most appropriate. So
Probably
that-
all would weigh in and participate in the process, yeah.
All right.
Okay, any other questions?
Has anybody got any funds on this, getting paid for services?
Well, the idea is that the scope of the, and maybe we should talk a little bit about the scope, Nancy, but the scope of the project is to study some of the vulnerabilities that we have along East Beach, along all the beaches that we have, and to try to come up with ways to mitigate damage from future storms. This is something that we do not have the expertise inside.
So will you be hiring an organization or an outfit or some person to do that
Exactly. We'll
study?
put an RFP out, and we will solicit proposals that will align with the objectives of the study, and then whoever is in charge of the study at that point will probably make a recommendation on just who to go with. But it will be an outside firm for sure.
I mean, my only thing, I looked it over, I read a lot of the stuff, and my only concern at the time, and it's there to me in the sense that this wasn't presented to the Water Resource Committee, which is basically anything dealing with stormwater, water stuff that we put together for the town. And I mean, it was, however it's got done, and I think they should have been part of it because we are the town. That is a town organization that's been supported.
Dick, you're exactly right, and we...
At the beginning.
We're exactly right, and that's the route that we took with the quite separate grant application that I was involved with for studying the Causeway, which is completely unrelated, it's a federal grant, and we would have taken that route, I think we would have taken that route in this case, but Water Resources was going to meet 2 or 3 weeks. We actually only had a week to pull together this application, and the only board that was sort of, that had pertinent responsibilities was planning, and Jim was volunteering that we can post it, have the meeting, and get the application in, and that was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Well, you might have been late to the table on that, because I was approached by Jim back in February to sign a letter to support this, and I did so, because we felt that, you know, what he was saying at the time, he was trying to get some endorsements on it. And it's in the packet, and most of the letters were dated in February, so...
It was
you
due
know,
February 28th.
Yeah, so...
Yes.
He was working on it. Prior to that, he came in one day when Jack and I were working. So at this point, we're going in good faith, based on the fact, Dick, that we're expecting that it will come back to the town, and we'll talk about how we're going to proceed from that point. So I think that's the best we can do, but I hate to hold it up. You know, we are going in good faith. We're hoping that the town will benefit from this and work, and not writing up a grant to benefit just, you know, other than non-town entities in this.
So, is there a motion? I'll move we go on record in support of the Coastal Community Resiliency Grant Program application.
Second.
Any other questions on that? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous.
Just like
you.
again, thank Nancy and Barb, but
You're
Nancy
welcome.
really spearheaded this, and if you look at that application, she did a quality job, so.
Keep finding more grants.
Absolutely. Actually, keep your eyes peeled. The governor put 50 million out, and energy grants would be the next step. So I think that's coming up in April, and I think the town is,
And we have an energy
certainly,
committee.
certainly in the
Too bad
running.
the senator left, because he's introduced a solar bill that is not as attractive on the energy side.
Yes.
So you might want to take a look at that. It's introduced to the House. It helps pretty much the folks that are in the business of energy, the power companies, and at the expense of backup that they need to have. So it passes that on to the folks that are coming up with alternative energy sources.
So, yeah, so keep your eyes peeled for the next round of grants.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and next on the agenda is the reason we actually had this meeting tonight was to have a little bit of time that we could sit down and talk about discussion on town administrative business manager, and I put down the financial director treasurer position because I think we have talked about how Steve in the last year has functioned as a business manager, and in George's role going forward in terms of maybe how we might want to look at that. So before we go forward with some kind of a job description or look at what we've done in the past, I want to, at least for discussion purposes, get that out there in terms of review. George, after he running unopposed here, as a treasurer, he may reconsider his interest and may want to stay on for the whole 3 years, too, so that's still in the process, but I'd open it up to discussion for the board right now. In our packets, we did receive information. I was surprised it's somewhat dated. We have some more current information in terms of job descriptions and actually even posting when we went out last time for the town administrator's position in an ad that we placed, so. But we do have some material. We also have a bylaw that relates to the Board of Selectmen. We don't have one that describes the position of town administrator. We had a subcommittee, Craig was on that
We had
at
a
one
proposal
point.
for one.
We had a proposal, but we never, I think they tabled it or passed over it at the town meeting for the town administrator. Does everybody have a present job description that we have on the books? So you have that, and I'd open it up to discussion at this point.
My main question would be, ask Jack what he feels he does that isn't in the job description, so we can modify it, so people get what they're expecting. Jackie, did you notice anything that should be tweaked at this point, or do you need more time?
Well, I haven't really reviewed it in that regard, but I could.
Actually, I think Jack and Steve were, by the way, Steve Lombard has joined us a week earlier. He just couldn't wait. He came back from his vacation in Florida to be with us. And I hear the latest rumors they're reconsidering their positions and might want to stick around for another year. Now, that wasn't a joke. Why are people laughing?
So you need more time, Jack, to really put into it?
Well, you want me to?
Well, I mean, no, just, you know, I like the job description, but we should tweak it to what you feel isn't included in it that you do.
And there are 3 documents that you may want to pull into this discussion. There's the one in front of us. There's Michael Coughlin's contract, which was based upon a bylaw that was presented, I think, at the 2006 town meeting, which was defeated or passed over. And then there was a recommended bylaw in 2011, which was very much modeled after the 2006 bylaw. But I think that's probably up-to-date versions of this. And in both cases, I think there was an attempt to delineate the role of the town administrator vis-a-vis the role of the Board of Selectmen, because there was some ambiguity in terms of how do you share that executive power. And I think we've got to be very clear about that, because I think we haven't had a problem in the last several years, but it was a bit of a bone of contention between previous boards and the town administrator in the late 2007, 2008 era.
I mean, we still have issues now, depending on what's happening, what we think our role is and what the town administrator's role is. Now, we hired 2 people who were town managers, and they were town managers in more than one community, so they have a sense of what they think their role should be and how they've interacted with boards. We've kind of grown from an administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen into what we call a town administrator, and some of us feel that should be a town manager, and others feel it should be an administrative assistant. And some days we even change our mind, and depending on the issue, where we want that to be. But so it's awful difficult who's ever in that role to have some kind of, game plan in terms of how they're going to do their job. I do say, I think where we're at now with some of the issues that are coming to us right now, it's certainly helpful to have somebody with at least some experience in town government to deal with a small town with some of the growing pains and some of the financial restraints that we have. We have a treasurer who's going to be stepping down at some point. We have a position that's going from an elected to an appointed position as treasurer. It might be a time to look at how we handle the financial director part of it, how we handle the treasurer's part, how do we handle the town administrator's part. And I really think we need to start looking a little bit clearly in how we handle the human resource function as a town, because things have changed. And Jack's been trying to do that this year. Steve's been trying to do that. When we did the contract last year, I read an article in the paper, and it sounded like that the board was in disagreement with Jack. I remember seeing people sitting before us with pins and Save Jack, and what we were talking about was really what we needed in the functions of day-to-day of a town administrator. And Jack had recommended, and we went along, and we thought it was a great recommendation of bringing in Steve to work as a team. So we've got somebody who functions on the business side and somebody who can pay a little bit more attention to procurement. There's only so many hours in a day. to shepherd through the purchase order system that we implemented, to shepherd through a financial policy program that we were, financial management policies, and that's work. And so we're putting some things in place. I think the board and I think the community has to decide what they're really looking for. Are they looking for somebody to carry out administratively the policies of this board? Or are they trying to empower somebody to be the day-to-day manager? You know, we debated when we were going to close the building one day in terms of how we were going to do that and how we were going to empower the person in charge of doing that. So, you know, I don't mean to pick on that particular situation, but it's difficult if you're the person trying to make that decision. You know, if they're going to call 5 board members to see if they should close the day. I mean, so at some point, I think we need to empower whoever we have in that position, and then we have to decide how best to do that and onto what description we should have. Whether we call it a town administrator, it could be a powerful one, it could be a weak one. Some town administrators have more power than a town manager. If you go to the Mass Municipal Association website, there are a number of jobs that are listed as town administrator and town manager right now. And you can talk to some of those communities and their history. It's all over the place, depending on, it really comes back to the board. And in some cases, if the board is cleared in what they want to do, in some cases by charter or by design, the community has decided what they want in terms of their day-to-day administrator. I don't think it's really clear from our board is, you know, based on the way we have our bylaw for the Board of Selectmen, it's clear what our responsibilities are. But how we interact with the person we hire as our administrator is still a little fuzzy. And maybe this discussion could center around that, or research could go around that, and maybe we could, as a community, decide how we want to proceed. Do we want a town administrator, or administrative assistant, or a town manager?
I think we're fortunate that we have 2 here. Usually some towns only have 1 individual. We have 2 individuals here, and both have experience, whether in business, human resource, and all that. And I would like to see Jack go through this thing, see how we can tweak it, and especially Steve. Steve's been around an awful long time, and I think it's important for him. What should we put inside here? I think my own personal thing that we can't, how could I say, evade our responsibility as a Board of Selectmen. But we're being elected, we're being held accountable, and I think some responsibility has to come back to us, and I think that's the way it should be set up. And we just can't say, okay, we're going to sign off on this and say, and just take that. I think if you're going to be in this position, I think you have to take some time, go through it, and still, again, we made sure that we have to sign all contracts. We have to. It's our responsibility, and I wouldn't want to give that up. I think that's whoever, whether we have an administrative assistant or whether we have a town administrator. I think it has to be that a lot of stuff has to come back to the board. And I know it's a lot of challenge, and it's a lot of work. Some people have a full-time job. Some probably aren't fortunate to be semi-retired or retired. But I think that's all part of the deal when you run for this position. Not that you have to put in an extra 40 hours. But I think that's what I would like to see, that a lot of the control and everything stays at the board level. This way, if there's any problems, responsibility, next election come, people vote you out. And that's my personal thing.
Well, there is state law that relates to the executive office in the town and the role of the Board of Selectmen. In addition, recently we passed the town bylaw. It's page 114 in the bylaw and finishes on page 115. Do we all have copies of that and know what we're working under? If not, I can, the bylaw. Diane, could we make copies of this so we can at least, that might be something we might want to take a look at, as well as the job description. I do think that we ought to take advantage of talking to our treasurer as it relates to any suggestions he may have in terms of the interaction with the Board of Selectmen, or the interaction with the Finance Committee, or the interaction with the Accounting's office, or the Tax Collector's office in finances, in terms of is there any suggestions based on his experience to deal with the financial direction, if you would, and providing some oversight. And I think it'd be appropriate to talk to Steve about this. Steve is the guy who balanced the budget and tried to work with individual departments, but also try to work with other committees and departments in terms of a town-wide approach to this. So this might be an opportunity where we can kind of, do we need one person? Do we need two people? I mean, basically, we have Steve and Jack and our George, our treasurer, who probably won't be here 6 months from now, all three. So I think this is something we got to spend a little time on very quickly and decide what we want, what our priorities would be, and how can we address some of the needs that we have as a community. So, any other thoughts and comments on?
No, I mean, I'll let Jack, that's why I asked for us to have this discussion, but I'll let Jack dial it and work on it a little bit, tweak it, and keep it on our agenda. And get this pushed.
Well, I'd like to suggest some things. George, you want to come up and chat, or you want to chat about this at all? Any comments on what we've said so far?
Staying low.
Okay. Well, I do think we need to address, most towns now have had some kind of financial director of some kind. It could be the treasurer, it could be a business manager of some kind, it could be an extension of somebody in the accountant's office, but somebody who focuses on the big picture, could be the budget person in charge or whatever, but provide some direction to other boards and departments. I think that's a direction. I'm not saying eliminate a department or anything like that, but I think somebody focuses that way, and that person should have some expertise in banking, should have some expertise in finance, and I think they should have an overall budget analysis capability and assessment. I think we certainly, I mean, it's on our agenda again tonight, we have to have somebody who pays attention to the HR function within our community. You know, we got a $32 million budget, we employ a lot of people, and I think we need to have, if we're going to have a time card system, we need to have policies and procedures that we can monitor in that regard. I think we need to have somebody who can oversee that, can work with supervisors and directors in that area. You know, I think there's some technical areas that we need to have somebody who has somewhat of a background in human resources. And I do think that we need to have somebody who can overall manage and understand at least some public administration background. Now, is that all one person? Is that 3 people? Is that 2 people? You know, we can decide that. If these 3 people decide they want to stay on for another year, then maybe we don't have to decide it as quickly. But I think we need to start addressing some of those issues. I just passed out the, I'll just go over this real quickly. You know, the first couple of things that relate to the terms and the numbers of people. Then the powers and duties, which is 5804, you know, discusses what the responsibilities are for the Board of Selectmen. Then it gets into appointing authority and intergovernment relations. Now, again, there's state legislation as well, but that's what we have on the books. What we don't have on the books is the person who kind of follows through. We're the kind of policy setters, and we provide the leadership within the town. But what we don't have clearly is the person who works for us, who carries out some of those policies. It's a day-to-day manager, how that person interacts with the board and how they interact with other people within the community. There are people, I think one of the things I've seen in the last 3 years is very difficult for a town administrator to get a sense of direction sometimes from folks, because you kind of look for a direction from the board, but it's a 3-2 vote sometimes. That's difficult. And you also are going to have pressures from people coming in that are not even elected, that may represent different special interests that are very important to our community. And they take the time away from what the town administrator is supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis. So we get upset sometimes because the priorities are not what we see as a priority. And I think you have to empower the person to kind of make that judgment sometimes. So, for example, tonight, I think the school committee was anxious to see something that we had agreed to last time, that we'd try to take a vote on and do minutes. So, staff-wise, we couldn't get that done in time. We couldn't get the minutes out. So, you know, we could be critical of that, I suppose, but there's only so much that we can do from this side of the table. And if we hire somebody on the other side, I think we should give them the tools to get the job done, but we need to be clear on letting them do the job. Once we decide collectively as a board, this is what we see our town administrator's responsibilities to be, and then get a buy-in from the community on that as well. Because right now, there's a little tension, I think, that develops with folks that if they're not pleased with what the selectmen decide, well, we'll just see if the town administrator can do this a little differently, and sometimes that's not the appropriate way to go either. Might be in some cases, it might be the appropriate way to go, depending on your particular bias at the time on an issue, so.
This has come around quite a few times. I mean, I think we have to take a fresh look at it. But I do think if we look back at what has been done in terms of sort of delineating the role of the town administrator vis-à-vis the Board of Selectmen. We did not opt, when we had the ad hoc committee, for a town manager form of government or a strong town administrator, so there was a balance of power. And I think it's probably worth looking at the way that that was addressed and that let this board sort of weigh in on it. I think if we are looking at a loss of personnel in 3 months, I think we should move ahead and post, when we get that clarity, a town administrator's job description. Now, that's issue A. Issue B is restructuring the finance side of the town. We've got too many departments that are touching finance, and if you want to have a chief financial officer or a budget director for the town, I think we have to look at all of the variables in play. And one place to start is with the Department of Revenue report that was issued in 2011 regarding the structure. We have some opportunities that are presenting themselves right now. And I think if we could look at these two issues as interrelated, but not as interdependent, I think we would go a long way to making some decisions. And I would urge that if we are facing the imminent loss of talent in the next 90 days, that we should move post-haste to at least to start the search process for a town administrator, have some of these issues resolved by our board, and then kick some of our recommendations or our conclusions over to the search committee, so that a search committee can address them through the kinds of individuals they're seeking and some of the criteria they want to use to screen applicants.
Well, last year, in May 10th, 2013, we actually put an ad in the paper for a town administrator. Let me read it. Westport, population 15,700, is seeking a full-time town administrator. The person will be reporting to a 5-member board of selectmen, and Westport has an open meeting form of government. The total budget for the town is approximately $31 million. The successful candidate will need to demonstrate good communication and computer skills. A master's degree in public policy, public administration, and business administration is preferred. Related municipal management experience will be considered and is also preferred. Knowledge of Massachusetts municipal law, procurement experience, and proven record of success in employment are also preferred. A competitive salary will be offered to the successful candidate commensurate with qualifications and experience. Westport is an equal opportunity employer. A job description is available on the town's website. This was posted last year when we did the job search, and I think the job search, or the subcommittee of this board actually reviewed the applications, and then we did the interviews, we went that through.
The whole board did.
And we used this job description, which is the one that's on record right now. If, based on what you just said, is that the pleasure of the board, you want to tweak the ad at all? You know, we had candidates last time, we went through the process. You know, earlier on, we talked about what we were going to do and how this was what we started advertising. At the same time, we talked to Jack about why can't we do something by adding to the areas that Jack wasn't getting to. Now, that's unfair to say he wasn't getting to. There's only so many hours in a day. I mean, the guy's working way beyond the 20 hours a week. But there were some priorities that the board had that were maybe different than what Jack had in the time that was allotted. When Steve came on board, we started addressing some of those additional priorities, and we divided it up a little bit. Having the advantage of having two very seasoned people was very easy, because, you know, the learning curve was pretty simple for both of them. Now, we might not have liked some of the directions that they took, but they took it based on their experience working in a number of communities, for better or worse. I would say that if, based on what you were saying, Craig, and based on what I'm hearing from some of the board members here, you want to put an ad in the paper and start the process. Put it out for 30 days and have, you know, you can decide whether you want a subcommittee or you want to have a separate group or whatever. I mean, we have to really wrestle with this in terms of the job description, in terms of the interview process, but I don't think it's just a town administrator we're talking about here based on the job description. I think we need to look at how we interact with the budget aspect and the financial piece as well. That's just my personal opinion on it. And I think one person can't do all that. Now, whether it's 3 people or 2 people, I don't know. I think that depends a little bit on, you know, who's out there and what their backgrounds would be.
But then we just say that we would give at least for our next meeting, that would have Jack and Steve just kind of look over this, tweak this, and our next meeting, we should vote and start advertising, and I think it should be the full board. We meet, like last time, we met on a Saturday, we had all the stuff, we took our top 5 picks or 6 picks, I think, and then I don't think this should be a subcommittee, I think the whole board should be involved, and then we'd bring the finalists back to an open meeting. But that's just my opinion. But I think, I think it'd behoove us to let Steve and Jack put some of these questions, because they've been sitting here now listening, you have kind of an idea, they know some of the, what we have coming, whether there's gonna be someplace in the administration side, whether there's gonna be some on the budget side. So I will just postpone it for a week.
If we can we start the advertising process and also tweak the job description by next week? I mean, are people gonna pull this job description down in the interim?
I guess you didn't like what I read. I was hoping we could at least get the ad out, and then it would buy us 30 or 45 days.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
Can we-
if it's less than a year, this was in the paper.
Yeah, is that in the, that's not in this packet, is it?
No, I was surprised that it wasn't, so I pulled it, because I
Yeah,
remember
okay.
we did it last year.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, I mean, it's what went out.
It's really general.
I mean, the rest of it said, please send resume and a cover letter and 5 references to the town administrator's job search. Attention Chairman Richard Spurlett, Town Hall, address. Applications will be reviewed beginning May 10th.
Yeah.
So I'll motion that we move ahead with that advertisement, and at the next meeting, perhaps both Jack and Steve will have had a chance to review the job description and tweaked it, and we'll move on.
Okay, we have a second on that? Okay, now, when we put this in the paper, we want to start, we can put this out anytime, like tomorrow or the next day even, but we want to start putting a date in when we would start reviewing applications, so give some time for that to happen. So tomorrow is April 1st. You want to start reviewing May 1st?
May 1st, I think we
I
should,
think Jack's got a fishing date in the middle of June.
That's right.
So he's going to be out at least for a time period there.
I think we release the ad a week, we approve it now, we place it so that we have some opportunity to update the job description that'll be on the website when the ad finally goes live.
Yep.
So I'd be looking at placing, because it requires a couple of days to get these things in.
Sure.
And then not have the ad go live till after you've had a chance to sort of review and update the job description that will be accompanying, that they would be linking to off of this ad.
Well, it's a little bit, I mean, we really should go back to the personnel board if we're going to change the job description, shouldn't we?
No, just tweak, we don't have to change the whole.
This is your job.
So,
Just tweak the.
Yeah.
okay, so, but out of courtesy, I mean, I almost think we need to add maybe to the job description on some other areas. We can do that when we start the interview process. We should at least be out there for 30 days to get the word out.
Yeah.
So if it's April 1st and we're going to get something out maybe the end of the week, aren't we talking May 10th, May 15th or something? That we'd start looking at applications then? So Diane, when's our meeting in May?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, does anybody have a calendar?
In May,
Anybody know,
we've agreed to meet on the 5th and the 19th.
So how about-
Craig, you're missing on the 19th.
How about we meet in between, the Monday in between for that purpose?
Yeah, that's fine.
The 12th?
May 12th? So applications will be reviewed beginning May 12th. Doesn't mean we're going to fill them all there, but we'll at least see what we got. We'll start looking at the applications, okay?
Yeah, you're gonna put until filled, you're not gonna put an end date there, correct?
Oh, we didn't, right.
Yeah.
We didn't last time, we won't this time, right.
Put the ad in.
And, we may come back and we find out that these 3 people want to stick around for another 12 months, and, we might have this, the job begin the following year or something.
Say it again, they're gonna be out on stress, so be careful.
No, they're 90% there now. Are you kidding me?
Okay, so
Beacon,
we have a
What's that?
motion.
Yeah.
the Beacon?
Yeah, the Beacon MMA book.
I think we do the Beacon. I
That
think
was my
that,
next question. Where are we going to advertise?
well,
Website and then
I-
the cheaper fee.
I think we do the Beacon, and I think we hit some local papers as well. It's up to, what's the board feel? What do you want to do?
We think we should do the Beacon local newspapers.
Okay, that's what we do.
Plus on our webpage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think if we go local newspapers, we'll get a different spectrum of talent as
Yep.
well versus,
We had a cast of
Municipal.
1,000 last time, so, I'm sure you're going to get
There was about 35
applications.
people out there,
Yeah.
but that number, somebody, that came forward.
And, you know, the salary is, you know, we're talking about successful candidate commensurate with qualifications and experience, so, you know, we got a range. We're not talking salary. If somebody comes in, the first question they ask for salary, as far as I'm concerned, that's the last question I'll be asking, because I'd move on to the next candidate. We need to find a good match for, and we'll be fair to people, but they're not going to be, you know, rich working in Westport, but they'll love the quality of life that we have. Even the people in these positions now are appreciating that as they go and travel to other places. Right, Steve?
Right.
Okay.
95% stress factor. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we take a vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. All right, that
Mr.
would-
Chairman, May 12th, 6 o'clock?
May 12th, 6 PM.
Yes.
Yep. And I guess the first round probably would have to be, you know, we shouldn't go public with the first round. That has to be executive session, because we certainly need to come out and talk about the finalists in a very open session, but I think we have to give some consideration. I wouldn't want to embarrass Jack or Steve if they're candidates coming back on this again, so. And who's to say that, you know, between now and then, George might have some other discussions on how we handle the financial piece. We all set with that? Okay, we're on to discussion on time cards, pay grades, personnel records, and federal reporting order.
Tony, are we, I know we have the school folks here, are we gonna address that at some other point, or?
Sure we can. What are we addressing?
Well, I heard there was some confusion about the wording of the statement of interest.
Well, that's not on the agenda, but, I mean, there's, Jack told me just as it was coming in, there was some question about the wording.
Chairman, I think the confusion has been resolved in that the minutes are going to be transcribed to reflect the exact language that was used when the motion was read. So none of the issues with regard to the construct of the resolve are going to be addressed. Now, if the selectmen and school committee, in the meantime, want to change that motion to reflect some changes in the organization of the wording of the resolve, then that's up to you. But we're going to reflect exactly what was presented and voted in the minutes.
Sure, good.
As the maker of the motion, I think notwithstanding grammatical issues, which I think we could stay awake all night doing that, there's one word that was efficiency, which should have been deficiency, so there's a letter missing. And as the maker of the motion, when I see the written motion, I'm more than happy to amend that resolution coming before us. But I think the bigger issue...
It happened twice, Craig, actually, in a motion.
Yeah, but we were reading what was given to us.
Right.
And I think
So you're
that...
saying you correct it each time it was there?
Yeah, we'll correct it in the acceptance of the minutes, as we always do. The second thing is that we need to do it next week. I mean, this is, the application, the statement of interest is due on the 11th, and we're meeting on the 9th.
I think it would have been done tonight. We had court case that we had to attend, and we lost Diane and we lost Jack to the courts, and that was unexpected, and it got delayed, and it was 2 days, and then it was, we just didn't have the time. I know Diane, I emailed her first thing this morning about not having the minutes on either. We had the minutes from the previous meeting, too, that dealt with this discussion on time cards and pay grades and so forth, and that, we don't have the minutes for that here either, so...
So we'll deal with this on the 9th,
Yeah, I don't think, I
Tony?
mean, I don't think there's any intention of delaying it. I think we're going to get it out as soon as we possibly can, and we recognize it's time-sensitive for the schools. And even though it wasn't on our agenda, it was brought to us, and our board decided to vote on it that night, we're still going to try to honor the minutes and have them ready in time.
So that works for everybody. The 9th is good. No, everybody's okay with that, right? The 9th.
I was okay with that last time. That's why I thought we could be talking
Oh, no,
about it tonight.
I just heard that we were going to have a discussion tonight, and I didn't see it on the agenda.
Well, we're having more of a discussion than we should, considering it's not even on the agenda. So I would suggest we move on, and unless I'm missing something here, I mean,
No, it's fine. I just
You know?
want to make sure I know the right,
Craig,
stand out
you
there. I
made
don't
the
know if
motion. Are
they-
you comfortable with what we're saying here?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. let's go with it.
We have a member of the committee at the mic.
But the 9th is going to be a reorganization and whatever.
Approval of minutes.
Approval of minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
all we're doing is, you know, if we correct the minutes in terms of the wording or something, we do that, we get a vote on it, and it's done. You know, it's not, we're not debating it again.
Yeah.
You know, unless
That's fine.
somebody wants to debate the issue again. I mean, I'd certainly like to get it back on the table, but I voted against it, so I don't know how we can bring it back up myself, so. So I think we're just routinely going to do that. you know?
I just want the assurance that it is going to be on the agenda on the 9th, because that's it.
Well,
If
you
it
heard it.
doesn't get approved on the
Yeah,
9th,
no,
we
understand.
can't submit our SOI.
Understand. You
So, I mean,
understand.
that's a drop-dead date for us.
Understand. We, yeah, and I can give you as much insurance as I've said publicly here tonight.
Well, the message I got from our superintendent was that she was given assurances it was going to be on tonight's agenda. And I understand if you guys were pulled out, whatever, but it wasn't even posted on the agenda to be discussed tonight.
When it wasn't, I actually emailed and asked about that, and I was told at that point, people didn't have a chance to get it done. And that's not the only thing that we didn't get on the agenda tonight.
I
For
understand.
minutes that we needed, so.
I understand, but this is
Nobody
time
intentionally
sensitive.
was trying to say, well, let's see if we can make it tough for the schools or something. It was just, you know, we'll have it out, and I don't anticipate any problem.
That's fine.
And if I can speak to the issue?
I guess so. We're dragging this out.
Again, I don't think it's dragging it out.
Well, I do because it's not on the agenda, so make it brief and let's go on with it,
And I
okay?
appreciate that, but the unanticipated event is, in fact, that we found an error in a very small word, and it would be my suggestion to perhaps address that change tonight if you saw
We
fit.
can't, it's not on the agenda.
Well, it's unanticipated because we didn't know about it when you put the agenda together.
Actually,
It's
the
your-
vote was unanticipated because that wasn't on the agenda as well. So I'm going to call you out at this point, and
Sorry, I just-
the school committee, we gave the school committee an opportunity to be heard. They were on the agenda. We waited until everybody was here. I wasn't expecting that they were going to present us something that evening that we were going to vote on. Okay, so I could have, as chair, questioned even the vote and how we're going to handle that. And as a person who voted against it, you know, I have some motivation to do that if I so choose. So I would ask that we stop this discussion now. It's not on the agenda. Let's approve the minutes. If you want to have a discussion about those minutes of the wording, Craig has already suggested that he's going to entertain a change for some wording in terms of a couple of words, and I think that's about it. Let's move on, okay?
As long as we're reassured that that'll be an approved change for next week.
I've said it twice. Okay, let's go back to our discussion on time cards, pay grades, personnel records, and federal audit. Jack?
I've reported twice now on this subject in previous reports, and most recently at the last meeting on the FLSA audit, which the board decided not to take up at that time. That report is attached to the report that I gave to you this time. Some aspects of this report are confidential in nature, and I'd ask the board to respect that. At one point, I'm going to reference a letter from town council and a suggestion of town council that will enable us to go into, hopefully, an executive session the next time we meet in order to begin to deal with one of these issues.
Yeah, I would, to the chair, I find reading the confidential memos that it's very difficult for us to have this conversation in open session, because we're going to have to make reference to items that are contained in confidential memos. So I think I would prefer that we table this item until an executive session.
Yeah, Mr.
And then
Chairman.
if we have to come back into open session with some policy recommendations, I think it would work to our benefit, because I think we're going to put ourselves in the position of making reference to confidential items that we haven't noticed personnel on. And so I, for one, am very uncomfortable dealing with this issue, even on the policy level right now.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest then that I present on problem number 1, as I reference it in my first page, and that we arrange for the executive session that council has suggested with reference to problem number 2.
Well, I think, As chair, I would suggest maybe, we have time this evening. I mean, we could go into executive session later and then, and talk about this. We don't have town council, but we could at least address some of these issues. So I don't know that you have to put it off.
Not posted.
Okay. All right.
The first item,
I
though,
guess-
Mr. Chairman, is not, is really a suggestion in terms of how we move forward with a system.
Well, I think it's difficult to just take something out without having a bigger discussion.
All right.
And as Craig's saying, I think then people might want to weigh in and have different perspective on what we're saying here,
That's
so.
fine.
You did mention here that the Attorney Jenkins would be here, but he's not scheduled to come this evening, is that it?
No.
Okay. And perhaps at our next meeting, we can put this as an executive session item?
Sure.
And not discuss any of it this evening? It's just that we are looking in, we have been looking
Okay.
into personnel matters that relates to staffing, and we're prepared to take some next steps in terms of policy and addressing some of these issues.
Fine.
You've done the work on it, and we're ready to go with it. I'd ask, I was under the impression that we had taken a vote, and that's one of the reasons I was looking for some minutes tonight, that we were asked Steve to get involved in that as well.
Steve was supposed to be involved in this.
Yeah, maybe we didn't take a vote. I thought we had taken a vote on that, but regardless, we're at this level now, Steve's back, and the good news is that maybe between now and the next meeting, Jack, you and Steve can kind of review and
Sure.
have some discussion about this, so
Okay.
we can move forward.
So,
But I mean, I would be comfortable with dealing with it this evening. You've got it on here, but I respect what Craig's saying. It's very difficult to talk in general areas without revealing some of the
That's
details
fine.
we're trying to
I think
address.
that's a good idea.
So we're talking about our meeting on the 9th, which is a Wednesday, which is after the election reorganization meeting. We want to do an executive session as well? Or you want to put that off for another?
I don't want to put it off, I mean, unless you want to have, we can have a meeting in 48 hours to discuss this. You don't have to wait until the night.
It's your call, I just...
Nine, at 5:30?
It's the board's,
That's fine.
I don't think you can do this in a half an hour. You know, I think you need to allow...
But it's only a
more than half an hour.
reorg, so we could start the regular meeting at 6:30.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to start at 5:30, I think you could at least allow an hour for
I
this.
agree, we should allow.
Well, I think, why don't we do it the other way? Why don't we have the general reorg and then go into executive?
Yeah, we should have approval of
Then
minutes,
we have-
general org.
Then we can have, we won't be up against the clock for...
Whatever the pleasure of the board is. Want to do
Yeah,
that?
Tony.
Okay, so we'll schedule a reorganization. You don't have anything scheduled for the 9th, right, Diane?
I may have, I gotta check.
Well, I would suggest that unless you can identify something this evening, that we have two things on the 9th. We have the reorganization, and we have executive session after that. Reorganization takes 15
Get the
minutes.
minutes with the reorg.
We approve the minutes,
Which will include the
outstanding minutes
minutes of
if
the
we
meeting
can,
that
and
relate
this
to
is it. If there's anything else that's on there, if there's a public hearing, it should be scheduled for that.
Okay, would you allow me to go check?
Yes, I would, by all means, because I'd like to finalize this before we finish this evening. Okay, why don't you just hold on that, and when she comes back, we can confirm that. Next, we have an appointment for the beach committee, and I guess there's a letter in our packet referring to this. Anybody have any?
Yeah, Millicent
Want me to
Troop,
read it for you?
Clerk, you have to take the notes while she's gone.
I'll read it. Want me to read it for you?
Sure, yeah, get the letter.
It just says, Board of Selectmen, March 23rd, 2014. I was sorry to hear that Bob Carroll health was not good and he's no longer able to serve on the beach committee. Mr. St. Michael suggested that I write the Board of Selectmen to say that I would like to remain on the beach committee. I have been sitting in for Bob until he was able to return. I have lived in Westport for many years and I have an interest in town beaches that gives so much pleasure to the people of Westport. Also, I have a strong interest in the birds, wildlife, and safety of the beaches. Thank you for your consideration. Melissa Troop of Main Road of Westport. So she'd like to be appointed as a member of the beach committee.
I move that we appoint her to serve on the beach committee.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. Now, we're not necessarily taking Bob off, if he, right? I mean, we've kind of, she was an alternate before, so we're giving her the status, voting status, as not being an alternate. But are we officially, by doing this, taking Bob off?
I'm not certain, Diane, what?
She was put on and to remain on until Mr. Carroll's return.
Right.
From what I'm hearing, he's not coming back, and has not submitted a letter even asking to be reappointed from way back
Right.
when we put her on.
But we don't know if he would like to at least remain on there, do we?
From what I'm hearing from the chairman, no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's my only concern. I mean, I'd like to give him every consideration on this, and, you know, I would like to give him some kind of status if he ever decides he wants to participate in it.
Shall we
Appoint him as an
contact
alternate?
Bob and make sure first, and
Or appoint him as an alternate? Until he's coming back.
maybe we should hear from either Bob or from the beach committee chair as to what the situation
So we
is.
rescind the motion we just voted on?
Well, we
She
voted
is
on it, and the
appointed.
request that came in. I would just say, let's send let's communicate with Bob and see how he would like to handle it, out of respect for him as a long-serving member of this committee. And we can decide, you know, maybe we make an exception, we know that, and we just ask for an honorary position. So I would think that he would like to have input if he could at some point, and we should allow that based on that experience. So that doesn't rescind the motion or anything, it just carries it through. Okay, Diane?
Okay. April 9th, I do have one public hearing, which has been advertised and abutters notified, and that's set for 6:15.
Can we change it?
It's already been advertised, and like I said, they've already been out. It should be very fast, less than 2 minutes.
What time is it on for?
6:15. It's a trailer transfer.
So we could do reorganization at
Okay,
6,
so-
and then,
Yeah,
Organization, public hearing, approve the minutes, 6:30 executive session.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Call the attorney down for 6:30.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
And no more.
That's what we said for this one.
Well, we had some requests already, and appointments.
For appointments for the 9th?
Yeah,
No.
well, from the police chief.
No, everything goes on the following meeting after that.
Okay, we're gonna have one which would be very important.
They're all important. Our work is always important at this board. If we want to, as a board, meet 48 hours, we can deal with the importance of it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you know, we can meet the following Monday if people want. But I think we need to address some of these issues. And I don't want to press in, we're paying an attorney, when the attorney's down here, we'd like to listen to him. We don't want to have him listen to us, and we're paying him to listen to us. So I think we need to be prepared, and we need to deal with some of these issues, and raise any questions that we may have as board members to Jack, to Steve, and let them try to get the answers long before they come down, so we can limit that discussion. But this is an issue that, from the town standpoint, it's a growing issue of a town in how we handle human resource issues, and I think we need to address it. We have some responsibilities, and let's kind of maximize the use of our time in that regard. I don't think we can do that if we start adding other stuff to the agenda. Heck, I might not be here anyway, so I won't have to worry about it. It's- What are we talking about? You'll be here, is that what you're telling me?
I'm
Okay.
not saying anything. That's
Okay,
jinx.
okay.
This is one hell of a writing candidate out there, at least one of you will be here.
Okay, all right. Action items, none. Minutes, none. Question and answer period? None? Correspondence, none. We're meeting on the 9th. Around the table.
I have nothing, just to make sure, this is our last meeting, make sure people go out and vote on April 8th. And don't forget, the polls open at 8 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, 10 to 8. It's not a state or federal election, so polls open at 10 o'clock, April 8th, and closes at 8 o'clock.
And I hope everybody's making out all right with the floods, especially the situation we had on Route 6. Hang in there, I know I had a little moisture this one too, so we've had everything in the last year here in town. Greg, you're up.
I'm all set.
all set, Mr. Chairman.
I prepared Jack for this. I told him I was going to give him the business about being a technician or a politician, because he is a politician in Middleborough. He's the chair of the Gas and Electric Commission.
Not anymore, I'm not the chair this year.
But you're still in an elected position
I
in
am.
your community. And I think that our last meeting, Michael, we talked about the social daycare bills, and there was an expenditure of $8,000 per month for social daycare, and we were supposed to get a breakdown of that. So either Michael or Steve at the next meeting, not the 9th, but the one after that, I'd like to see a breakdown. We have increased, Steve, when you were gone, the revolving fund for social daycare. And I'm just trying to find out what's being posted there and what can be posted there, dealing with the budget and trying to balance some of these other areas. There were some comments that we're spending at a rate of $8,000 per month for social daycare, so we wanted to kind of look at that and itemize that a little bit if we could.
Right.
Anything else? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chair.
We have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. We stand adjourned.
Okay.